Across the vast expanse of the African continent, a new power has quietly established its presence. From the ports of the Red Sea to the copper belts of Zambia, from the deserts of the Sahel to the forests of Central Africa, one nation's shadow stretches further each year. To some, it is a symbol of partnership and opportunity. To others, a sign of strategy and ambition. The question lingers in the air: is China's expanding footprint in Africa the mark of a friend or the move of a future rival? The story begins not with soldiers, but with traders. Decades ago, China's connection to Africa was built on diplomacy, solidarity, and mutual struggle. In the 1950s and 60s, newly independent African nations found in Beijing a partner that spoke of shared histories, of colonial resistance, of sovereignty, and of self-determination. Chinese engineers built railways, medical teams crossed borders to offer care, and political ties were sealed with promises of equality and respect. But as time passed, China changed, and so did its ambitions. The world's most populous nation transformed from a developing state into an economic powerhouse. Factories hummed, skyscrapers rose, and cities expanded at lightning speed. Yet, this rapid growth brought a pressing challenge: an insatiable hunger for resources. Oil, copper, cobalt, iron, and lithium, materials essential to modern industry, became the lifeblood of China's rise. Africa, with its vast reserves, was the natural answer. In the early 2000s, a new phase began. Chinese companies, many state-backed, poured into Africa with loans, infrastructure deals, and investment packages that dwarfed Western aid. Roads, bridges, railways, and ports began to take shape across the continent, transforming skylines and economies. To the eye, it looked like development, and in many ways, it was. But behind every bridge and contract, analysts saw another layer: strategic positioning. Africa's geography offers something priceless: proximity to global trade routes. The Red Sea connects to the Suez Canal, a gateway to Europe and the Mediterranean. The Indian Ocean links Africa to Asia's booming markets. Whoever builds, funds, or manages the ports and roads that feed these corridors holds influence far beyond trade. And so, in 2017, China officially opened its first overseas military base in Djibouti, a small but strategic nation at the mouth of the Red Sea. The announcement was presented as a logistical move, meant to support peacekeeping operations, anti-piracy patrols, and humanitarian missions. Yet, its location, just a few miles from the United States' largest base in Africa, raised eyebrows across the world. For the first time in modern history, China had established a permanent military foothold on foreign soil. The Djibouti facility is unlike the massive Cold War bases of the past. It is compact, modern, and heavily fortified, built to project stability rather than conquest. Inside, Chinese naval vessels dock for refueling, soldiers rotate for training, and medical and logistics teams prepare for regional missions. Officially, its purpose is support, not aggression. But its presence has fueled speculation. Is this the first of many? Satellite images show Chinese-funded infrastructure expanding around key African ports: Bagamoyo in Tanzania, Lamu in Kenya, and Walvis Bay in Namibia. Each of these locations holds dual potential: commercial trade and strategic access. Yet, none are acknowledged as military bases. Chinese officials emphasize that their role in Africa is economic, not imperial. Still, analysts note that every road and port can serve more than one purpose. A harbor built for trade can, in times of crisis, accommodate naval vessels. African leaders themselves often defend the relationship. To them, China represents an alternative to the old order, a partner that builds instead of lectures, that offers loans instead of conditions. The Belt and Road Initiative, China's trillion-dollar global infrastructure project, has made Africa one of its central pillars. In exchange for contracts and access, African governments gain roads, railways, and new sources of credit. For nations long dependent on Western finance, this is an appealing deal. But beneath the optimism lies complexity. Debt, sovereignty, and transparency have become flashpoints of debate. Critics warn of debt traps, though many economists argue the term oversimplifies reality. What is clear, however, is that China's financial reach gives it enormous leverage. In the boardrooms of Addis Ababa and the ministries of Lusaka, decisions increasingly consider Beijing's interests. Then there is the question of security. Over the last decade, Chinese peacekeepers have participated in UN missions from Mali to South Sudan. Chinese-built drones and communication systems have appeared in several African armies. Chinese naval patrols in the Gulf of Aden are now routine. Beijing insists these moves are about protecting citizens and investments. More than 1 million Chinese nationals now live and work across Africa. Still, as with all great powers, presence brings influence. To the ordinary African citizen, the view is mixed. In the bustling streets of Nairobi, Chinese-built expressways save commuters hours each day. In rural Zambia, Chinese-owned mines provide jobs, but sometimes spark tensions over labor conditions. In Ethiopia, new rail lines connect cities once isolated by rough terrain. In the same country, locals question whether their sovereignty is being traded for development. The truth is not simple. It is both progress and dependency, empowerment and caution. What makes the narrative fascinating is how it mirrors global history. The same questions that once surrounded Western powers now circle around Beijing. Is China's rise in Africa a new form of partnership or a modern version of the same old patterns? The answer may depend less on China itself and more on how African nations manage their agency. Africa today is not the passive continent of the 19th century. Its leaders, economists, and citizens are more informed, connected, and assertive than ever before. They understand that every partnership, whether with China, the United States, or Europe, comes with trade-offs. What matters most is negotiation, transparency, and the courage to balance opportunity with caution. From the skies above Djibouti to the copper fields of the Congo, from the oil terminals of Angola to the ports of Mombasa, Africa stands at the center of the 21st century's great power game. The competition for resources and influence is no longer a hidden struggle. It is global and public. Yet, Africa's greatest advantage may be its own awakening. With every project signed, every policy revised, the continent learns how to navigate the currents of power. China's presence will likely continue to expand, not only through infrastructure but through technology and culture. Telecommunications giants like Huawei and ZTE already connect millions of Africans through fiber networks and mobile systems. Educational exchanges and Confucius Institutes introduce language and culture. These soft power tools shape perception as much as policy. But as with all partnerships, the future will hinge on trust. Can China convince Africans that its intentions are cooperative, not controlling? Can African governments ensure that investments serve their citizens first? The next decade will reveal the answers. For now, what is clear is this. The story of China and Africa is not one of domination or submission. It is a story of complexity. It blends ambition with pragmatism, opportunity with caution, friendship with strategy. Both sides know that the stakes are high. As the sun rises over the Horn of Africa, Chinese naval vessels glisten in Djibouti's harbor. Containers move along ports built with Chinese financing. Across the continent, highways stretch toward horizons once unreachable. Each mile of road tells a part of the story, one of connection, but also calculation. Africa's past was defined by the presence of outsiders who claimed to bring civilization but often took control. Its future, perhaps, will be defined by how it manages its partnerships. Whether China proves to be a friend or a competitor will depend on the principles that guide those relationships, the transparency of contracts, and the resilience of African institutions. As global power shifts eastward, the West watches closely. Reports and debates echo in policy circles from Washington to Brussels. The term hidden bases continues to circulate in headlines, though evidence points mostly to economic hubs, not secret outposts. Still, perception matters. Every port and contract becomes part of a larger story, the struggle to define the 21st century's balance of power. In the end, this is not just China's story or Africa's story. It is the world's story. A story about how nations rise, how influence spreads, and how cooperation and competition intertwine. A story about the new shape of globalization, written not in boardrooms or battlefields, but in ports, railways, and digital networks. And so the question remains, lingering in every conversation, every headline, every new deal signed beneath the African sun. In the age of shifting powers and silent strategies, who is truly shaping whose future?